that.
Should we play 5 things?
Yeah.
Okay. 5 things you'd find at a power plant.
Workers.
1,
Power.
2,
Plants.
3,
A big old boss.
4,
Hair?
5. Okay. Do you feel good? Do you feel warmed up?
Yeah. Do you want to do one?
Sure.
5 things you should never say to your doctor.
I'm a doctor.
1.
I have pictures to show you.
2.
I have a dog rash.
3.
I am a better doctor.
4.
I know your diploma's fake.
5.
Okay, cool.
Movie versus movie. Movie versus movie. Movie versus movie. Movie versus movie.
All right, welcome. Here we go. Hi, Alice. Welcome to Movie versus Movie.
Thanks, Nick.
Why don't you tell everyone about yourself a little bit?
I love movies.
Yeah, cool. You watch
And-
them more than I do.
I've watched way more movies than Nick.
Yeah.
So it's funny that he has the podcast and not me.
Really, honestly, I just sort of stumbled into this. So.
He tripped and fell and he landed on a podcast.
Yeah, exactly. Alice, you actually inspired this episode. Not only was it the month of love, February,
Ooh.
but you've been trying to get me to watch these movies for like a long time.
A very long time. I always want Nick to watch movies that I love, and he never wants to. So it took a podcast to make this happen.
This is the thing about movies, especially the ones that you love, is same with books, really. I used to, I guess we should also mention that we are dating. When we first started dating, I tried to like do the thing of like, I'm going to learn everything that you know that you really, really love and kind of like see what you're all about. And you started giving me books and you gave me music and I started listening to it and reading them. And I got to a stumbling block with the organ book where it was just it's a very well written, wonderful book
called Never Let Me Go.
Never
There's
Let
also
Me
a
Go.
film.
Yep. It is really essentially about people who are living so that their organs can be harvested.
It's dystopian fiction, but it's very well written.
Yeah, it's super well written, but it's also really fucking depressing.
I like sad books.
You do. You also like really stressful and sad movies. Which
Yeah.
Yeah. And I am somebody who is even at the best of times a low level of anxious.
Well, we find different things stressful.
Yeah. Whereas you find threats to your physical harm or threats to your, order of hierarchy of needs or whatever, I find everything stressful. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Especially TV shows.
Yeah, I hate them. Not really. I do like a good old TV film once in a while. That's what I call them.
TV films.
Yeah, TV films. But they do stress me out quite a bit. So
So it's hard to get them to sit down and
just
watch it.
But we finally did. And this trilogy, I should also mention Movie versus Movie fans, that not only is this episode movie versus movie, but
it's movie versus movie versus movie.
Yeah, woo! This is value because we are doing the Before trilogy.
Yes. Directed by Richard Linklater.
Yeah. I was going to say Robert, so it's good that you said it. Richard Linklater, who also did Boyhood, really obsessed with like the passage of time. We'll talk about it, but
Lots about time.
starring Ethan Hawke and
Julie Delpy.
who is wonderful. Had never heard of her before. Has she really done it?
This is what she's most known for.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Little French lady.
Yeah, she's really wonderful in these films. Just to give like a background, they're essentially like romance films.
Yes.
And they are all set 9 years apart from each other.
Yes, and we're all made 9 years apart from each other. So you see the characters and the actors actually aging throughout the 3 films.
Which is kind of Richard's little shtick.
It is his shtick. He does the same thing in Boyhood, except in Boyhood you see the child aging all in one film.
Yeah.
Which I find freaky.
It's too much.
It's too much.
Too quick.
It's too much. It's weird because I think in every other movie thing where you have someone aging, it's just different actors. And so I think that's what we're used to. That's what we're used to seeing. But in Boyhood, he's magically actually getting older and it's the same kid.
So is it kind of like Uncanny Valley, do you think? Or?
It feels it's not as Uncanny Valley as Uncanny Valley things.
Really well put.
because it is actually aging, so it's
not uncanny,
It's not
just
it's
life.
not fake. it's actually just the passage
It's
of
just
time.
the cosmic horror that is life.
It's a little something called puberty.
Yeah. But this trilogy really sidesteps all of the puberty stuff by starting us off after puberty.
Correct.
On a train. First things first, we gotta say that this trilogy of films is really a love letter to public transportation.
Yes, in Europe,
In Europe.
because the public transportation here
Not
romantic.
Not only do planes, trains, automobiles, buses,
Boats, lots of boats.
even some cars.
There's a car.
There
There's
is
a
a
car in
car.
the third one.
They not only do they get these characters from place to place, but they make them fall in love.
That's right.
They really, yeah, it's beautiful.
It is beautiful.
This is what a strong social safety net and
Correct.
investment into our public infrastructure could do. All of us could be in love right now if we had
On a train.
more investments in trains. But yeah, so let's start it off with Before Sunrise, made in 1994.
Released in 1995.
Yes.
Made in 1994.
Exactly.
So for the characters, it's 1994.
And yeah, the first thing I have written down is trains, we love them, because that is where we start off on this train going between
Somewhere in Vienna.
somewhere and Vienna. And
Well, we know that Julie Delpy's character was in Budapest
That's true.
with her grandmother.
Yes.
Who plays an important
Role throughout the films.
throughout the films. Yeah.
yeah, we see that there is this German couple who's really just fucking fighting.
They're giving it to each
They
other.
hate each other. One thing that I don't understand about, maybe this is something that says about me, but throughout these films there are several fights that happen, right?
Yes.
And every time that there's a fight, like the person who has been fought with gets left somewhere. Like in this German couple, the woman like grabs his newspaper and like throws it and then starts
then she
walking
leaves.
away. And he like gets right up and follows her. And I feel like if I'm ever in a fight, that I'm just sort of like, I think some distance could be good right now.
Yeah, and I think we see that again in the last film
Yeah.
as well, with when we see the two main characters getting into a pretty bitter fight.
Yeah.
Julie Delpy storming off, and then Ethan Hawke following behind
Yeah.
her.
Maybe it's the like unacceptableness of being apart.
Oh,
Love.
we need to be together 24/7.
Forever. No, so they
Monogamy.
so these two start fighting, the German couple, and Miss Delphi, Celine.
Celine.
Yeah, she's sort of like, fuck this shit. I'm gonna get out of here. And she gets up and
She's trying to read,
she's trying to read.
which already I'm into it.
and you saw yourself in this character.
I mean, Celine is maybe one of our best woman characters we have.
That's wow. That's,
I love her.
That's a big statement.
Maybe it's because I identify with her a lot.
Yeah, and you're just like, yeah, I am the best.
I
woman.
am Celine and I rule.
Yeah. Yeah, so she gets up and she starts walking to the back of the train a little bit, and she sits down and she sees across from her Mr. Ethan Hawke.
Mr. Ratman Ethan Hawke,
Okay,
as Nick
so-
referred to him.
So throughout these films,
Greasy rat man, I believe, were the
throughout
words
these
used.
films, the only thing that I really picked out as something that was unbelievable or whatever is that anybody could really find this greasy rat person attractive. That from his like hair to his weird little like whiskery goatee.
Yeah, it's not good facial
All the
hair.
way down to the way that he like rolls his top lip under it so that you see all of his gum and top teeth. He's just a rat
He's
man.
got a lot of teeth.
Yeah, he does. He's got all of them, really.
I think he's got more than normal.
Yeah, but the thing is that he's like he's quite good in these movies. Both of them, and we'll
They
talk
are
about
very
it.
good. They're very good movies.
Yeah, they're very good. But yeah, in a way where I was watching the movie and I was like, I even told you, I was like, were these like totally improvised?
Nick thought the entire movie was improvised, which is a wild thought to have.
So the thing about it is
When the structure of the film is quite good.
no, but it's filmed in such a way where it is so naturalistic.
It's very naturalistic.
that at any point in time I was sort of just like, yeah, this is, and even the way that the shots are framed and everything, they're not framed so that they are cinematic shots. They are framed so that they are real life, that we are looking at like how a normal person would see the world.
And it makes sense that you would think that they were improvised a little bit because Ethan Hawke and Julie Delpy had a lot of input into their characters, into what they would say. It wasn't just the writers of the film giving them scripts. I mean, obviously, Julie Delpy, I'm sure, is playing a version of herself.
Yeah, right.
As is Ethan Hawke.
Yeah, the same with Ethan Hawke, which like makes him even more of a rat man. I just think that there's something about him that I was just like a little off put by. But at the same time...
But it doesn't ruin the movie.
Yeah, it doesn't ruin the movie. And also I was just sort of like, these are definitely real people. And I think that me being off put by Ethan Hawke in this movie also like should give the listener a feel for how real these movies were, where it's sort of like, yeah, okay, whatever, man, and not, oh wow, movie star talking to movie star. There's like real, it just feels super nice to, and maybe that's why I didn't feel anxious watching it, was because I could just really settle in, and it was just like people talking.
It just washes over you.
Yeah, and it just feels like you are sort of party to an experience of these people just talking. I guess we should also get into like the plot of the film is that They start talking on the train. They have like a really interesting, cool talk.
They're both reading different books, which they share with each other.
Readers,
And
man.
immediately they start getting into, kind of deep, important talks.
They're starting to talk about like death and like
life and Ethan Hawke's ghost grandma.
Yeah, I guess that is true.
And that's before they even get off the train.
Yeah.
So they have some chemistry.
Yeah. And
right
again,
off the bat.
Like I was not attracted to Ethan Hawke in any of these movies. You were saying like in the first movie that you were like, yeah, I'd go there. And then Mary Ellen was also like hot as fuck for the first one.
I think it's not necessarily him, it's the situation.
Yeah.
It's just such a romantic, beautiful set of films and situation. And so they're on the train, and then Ethan Hawke has Julie is going back to her home in Paris. Ethan Hawke has, his name is Jesse. Julie Delpy. Sorry, Celine. Let's call them by their character names. So Jesse, he has a flight out of Vienna, and he was just going to bum around in the morning. He was just going to bum around the evening before.
Yeah, he doesn't have money for a hotel.
So he asks her to get off the train with him.
Yeah, like there's this great thing where they're having a great talk, and he's like, oh man, it's really sucks that I have to go. And then he leaves, and then he comes back and he's like, hey, this is crazy. Would you want to get off the train with me?
Hey, I just met you.
Yeah, and this is
crazy.
Want to get off this train with me? Yeah, and she's like, yeah, sure. And they get off, and then they just, like you said, start wandering around Vienna. Yeah, the city, and it's just really beautiful.
And most of the rest of the film is them talking and walking and doing various activities. They run into these two Austrian
actors.
I mean, they must. We're really hoping they're a gay couple. We don't know, but it feels like that's maybe what the film is telling us. They invite
them to go see this play. Yeah,
which is called in English "Bring Me the Horns of Wilmington's Cow."
Which honestly, if we were walking around Vienna and someone said that, I'd be like, yes, we have to fucking go.
If it was us, we would go.
But the other thing is that like it sets it up. There's like a really solid scene where this happens. Then they just never fucking go to the play.
They do mention missing the play.
Yeah.
Later, which I think is another part of the romance is that like they get so caught up in talking and walking, and they go to a bar and they play pinball. They go on a boat that they just forget that they were supposed to go to the weirdest play ever written.
Yeah, and they keep having these really deep talks. This is something that I've said multiple times throughout the thing. I would keep turning to Alice and be like, if even one of these things happened, you'd be like, wow, this is the most romantic thing that's ever happened in my fucking life. Like if someone asked you to get off the train with them and like go wander around Vienna and keep talking with them for the day, even if you say no, you're like, that was a fucking romantic thing. Even if, I mean, unless it's like a creepy, scary situation. But
I also think that the films, especially the later ones, they acknowledge how wild and romantic and once in a lifetime the experience of the first film is.
Yeah.
And so I think that even adds to how realistic and real they feel, because in the second film we have Jesse writing a whole book about that experience because it was so formative and so important in his life, even though it was only one night.
Yeah, we'll get to the second movie as well, because honestly, that's my favorite of the three. But the first one, so they talk to these play people. They're talking about death and love and life, and like Celine is low key depressed, right? Would you say? I mean, she's like, yeah, I'm scared of like the seconds before you die when you know that it's the end. And she like has like a lot of really morbid thoughts, which I 100% like have had too. So I was like, man, I see myself. Oh no, she's depressed.
I think it switches in every film who is the depressed one.
Yeah, that's yeah.
And I think it's interesting that they both have the capacity to be either very optimistic or very pessimistic, depending on where they are in their lives.
Yeah.
But it kind of goes back and forth. Who is because I think he's very cynical in the first movie, and he has that very like young white guy, only reads Hemingway and Dylan Thomas. He only reads books by white men.
Yeah. And also like whenever something kind of like magical happens, like he'll be like, well, you know that's just a fucking scam, right?
So throughout the film we see a amazing cast of characters who only come in for one scene, talk to our couple, Celine and Jesse, and then kind of
like
out of the room.
It's basically at every moment where it's sort of like, oh man, the romance is just dipping a little bit. Then someone will come in, like there's this bohemian poet sitting on the riverside who's like, hey, instead of me asking you for money, what if you give me a word and I write you a poem? And if it's add something to your life, then how about you pay me, essentially?
It's an improv show.
Yeah, it's an improv show. Give me a word, any word. If it adds something to your life, you can pay at the door. Yeah, but they're like milkshake, and he writes the most beautiful
in a very seemingly short amount of time.
Yeah, this guy is like the greatest writer of our time, and he just like gives them this poem. And then Jesse immediately is,
and Celine is very touched.
Yeah, she's touched. She's like, wow, that's beautiful.
He hands it to her. She asks him to perform it for them.
Yeah.
And then she pays him immediately. And she's very overwhelmed, which I thought I think is very beautiful and is very indicative of her sort of love for humanity and like openness to other people, which I think is the same thing about her and the fortune teller.
Yeah.
Which is a similar interaction that we see.
Yeah. And Jesse in both those situations is just like, he probably had that pre-written and just like plops in the word wherever it makes sense. And she's like, fuck you, dude. You suck. Which is great. I love that every time he is just like a little bit of like a dick and like trying to like smooth over the magic of the night, she is just like, you suck, stop doing that.
I have written in my notes, she drags him so quickly.
Yeah, really.
Like she is making fun of him and giving him shit from the train, like right when they meet, which is great because he needs it.
Yeah. And I mean, so before they have these like magical encounters, they go to a record shop, and she's like, oh, I love this record, maybe I'll find it somewhere else. And there's a listening booth in the back of the record
which
store.
Nick did not believe existed, but totally
it makes
did.
So much sense why there were so many baby booms like shortly after.
So
the
many
record
baby
stores.
booms.
Yeah, like because basically you take somebody who's like, I love this beautiful piece of music to me, and you shove them in a phone booth so that they can just sit still and listen to this beautiful music. And kind of in the movie, they're both just sort of trying not to look at each other at the same time, but they're both keep staring at each other, and you're like, oh my fucking god.
And of course the song is extremely relevant to their situation.
Of course, yeah.
And it's very romantic.
Again, this is another time where I was like, man, if this happened to me once on a date, I'd be like, this is the best fucking date ever.
It would be very funny if you replayed that scene but put a different song on top
like,
of it.
Wow. Yeah, just
or like Lil
porn.
Wayne or something.
Yeah. Macklemore.
But they reacted in the exact same way of being like, oh, we can't even look at each other because there's so much tension between us.
That would actually be a really funny little like movie, like a little short snippet to take out and then just throw whatever song.
And
it'd be so good.
Old MacDonald had a farm.
Or like, yeah, it'd be great. Yeah, so they're listening to the thing. It's just so good. And then I wrote down here that the acting is good/bad. And
Interesting.
because like the acting here is like, it doesn't feel like good acting. It just feels like how people normally are.
But don't you think that that's good acting
no,
then?
I don't think so. Because what actors have to do is they have to like show subtext, right? And they have to like really be, essentially acting is all about taking commonly understood gestures, phrases, facial expressions, feelings, and then putting those into place so that you can direct the audience to see like what the characters are doing, right? And in this one, there's none of that because they're just sort of living and experiencing it, but they're just like, oh God, it's so hard for me to say without being such a pretentious douche. But like
to me, I just find it so believable and so realistic that I don't think about the acting.
At any moment though, I wasn't like, wow, this is fantastic acting. I was just like, yeah, these are just people talking, and then that way it doesn't feel really
isn't
like
that
a
nice?
movie. It feels more like a documentary.
A very romantic documentary.
Yes. But like, yeah, it feels like the same way when I watch a documentary and people are talking. I don't feel like they're like, oh wow, what fantastic acting that person did when they told the story of like a ghost encounter in their life or whatever. It just feels like them talking, and that's the same way. So it was just, it's really beautiful, and it's something I haven't really experienced before, or at least not in a very long time in a movie where I was feeling that, which was really fun. I liked it a lot.
I just love how real these movies are. I was saying this to Nick when we were watching them, but it feels like most movies now, I mean, especially big budget, you know, we've watched all of the Fast and Furious films. I've watched some of the Marvel movies. Nothing in those movies is real. If they're flying in something, even if they're driving, they're not actually driving the car.
If they drive to space.
You know, if they drive to space in a car, it's not real.
Yeah, it just doesn't feel real.
And these movies, they drove, you know, if they're on a train, they're actually on a train. Like when they're playing pinball,
There's
can see.
no green screen, which feels great to watch.
Yeah, there's obviously no green screen.
No, but I mean, like, even in like normal movies that are like, you know, romance movies or whatever,
there still might be a green screen.
Yeah, they might put in a skyline or whatever. And in this, it's all just,
they're on the streets.
Yeah,
it's all complete. When they're on a boat, they're actually on a moving boat. When they're, like I said, when they're playing pinball, you can see them controlling the pinball machine.
Yeah.
Like that feels really, really nice, and it feels like nothing is faked.
It also made me feel like, wow, I could make this film.
Oh.
Not in a way of like, wow.
I'm Richard Linklater?
Yeah, I'm Richard Linklater, or like I have any director expertise. But it didn't feel like I needed a studio to, you know, throw $100 million at me to be able to get even close to this. Mm-hmm. It felt like, wow, I could just grab my camera and I could go out, and if I was really intentional about how I shot everything and like had really great actors and things like that.
And a good script.
Yeah, that we could make this happen, which was a cool feeling as well. I felt really invested in not only the film, but also the project that this art, it's sort of like an art piece where it's like, it's a project that now has lasted, you know, 28 years or whatever it is. And it just feels, good to be in it with them, because it feels like you're part of it in a weird way, because you are witnessing this. And
the promise that clearly the actors and the director made to each other to say, we will come back to this every 9 years without fail.
Yeah.
I don't think if there would have been a fourth one, it would have happened already. Yeah. So I'm happy with the three.
I did a little reading on it, and Linklater was like, yeah, if I do another one, I'd want it to be like 18 or 27 years later, so it's like them old.
Interesting.
Which would be really cool.
I would love to see it. I would love to see where the characters are.
Yeah.
And I think it's another beautiful thing about these films is that you don't know when you haven't seen them before. You don't know where, you just know that they're in, the two of them are in all three, but you don't know what their lives are like. You don't know what their relationship is to each other.
Yeah, I guess we should say right here, we're going to stop the plot discussion and say, like, if you want the full experience of these movies,
please watch them.
Please watch
and watch them
and
close
come
together.
Back.
In my opinion, I think they're the most effective.
They're only like an hour and a half long each, like 80 minutes in some cases, and I never felt like it was a slog, and we watched them all very close together. So yeah, I would definitely do that before finishing it out if you want like the full artistic experience of these movies.
Yes. If you haven't seen them, please watch them.
Yeah, I have a question.
Because we're going to ruin them.
Because we're going to take all the magic out. I have a question for you about Jesse, though.
Yes.
I know that it's like such a romantic situation and everything, but he has some lines in here where I'd be like, you're an idiot.
Especially in the third one.
Yeah, but let's still talk about the first one.
Yes.
There's one where the sun is setting. He goes, hey, you got sunsets here. And it's like, okay.
I don't remember
they have
that
sunsets everywhere, Jesse.
Well, I think we know from the jump that she is smarter than him.
Yes.
She is better than him. And these are feminist movies. Like they're positing that like, you know, she's gonna come down to his level. You know, she's the cool French chick and he's the dumb American.
Yeah.
And yeah, he's kind of a doof.
Yeah. And they also like...
But he's worthy of her.
Yeah, and also it does require like a little bit of suspension of disbelief. As we were talking after the first one, they were on a train for probably at least an hour, let's say. They get off and then they just walk around for about 8 hours. They would be so smelly. Their breath would be
so
horrible.
disgusting.
Think about how many times you'd probably have to go to the bathroom in that time.
And
with
where
this person.
are they going to the bathroom?
I know.
And
It's
they
fucking
make
crazy.
love after all of that.
I know. Spoiler alert. They totally fucking bang. And
Two times. We learn later.
Yes, we learned later that it was twice. And it was just like, man, you would be pretty smelly.
Yes. but they are a little drunk on wine, so
That is true. And also like...
they would be stinky. He looks like a greasy little monkey ball.
But monkey ball. So you agree that he's a greasy rat man?
Yeah.
Okay, great. I love that.
I never said that he wasn't. I just said that you said he was.
Yeah, and that's true. I speak the truth.
Yeah,
in
he
this
has a
case.
rat face.
And
I don't think Ethan Hawke is attractive.
do you think... What?
I just think it's
Is he-
really romantic, the
Yeah, but
situation.
has he been in a lot of other things? Like Ethan Hawke's like a name.
Hamlet 2000. Playing Hamlet.
Well, that, I mean, greatest role ever. But what else has he like been in that's like a real big movie? Has he been
That's
in anything?
such a good question.
I don't know.
I feel
can't
like
think
we
of a
should
single
know as the
movie.
movie podcast people.
Yeah, I'm gonna... Listen, you vamp about Ethan Hawke while I look this up.
I know he was married to Uma Thurman, and their daughter is on Stranger Things,
Okay.
and she's really good. And I don't know. I think Uma Thurman's more important than him. They're divorced now, though.
Oh, no.
I believe.
That's so sad.
Right?
Yeah. He's also written 3 novels, apparently. Just like in
Jesse!
the movies. Okay, cool.
I thought we were
We'll
going to
look.
say the same thing, but we didn't.
No, we didn't. We're not there yet.
He was in Dead Poet Society.
Okay.
That, I think, was his big break.
Okay. Here, this is what he's been in. Quiz Show, 1994.
Oh, yes, that classic movie. Everyone knows that. Quiz
Gattaca.
Show.
I've heard of that before, but I don't know. Joe the King, Hamlet 2000, Training Day, The Jimmy Show. I don't know any of these fucking movies. Oh my god.
I mean, do we think he's more... I mean, he's very famous, but it seems like he's been in a
But,
lot
like,
of
why?
small movies.
Why are you famous?
Is he famous because of these movies?
Before the devil knows you're dead. I feel like the devil would always know when you're dead, because that's like when you meet the devil, right?
That's a thinker. I'm gonna have to think on that.
I guess if you're also like at the railroad tracks, maybe you got like hit by a train. It's like you want to make, oh no, and then that brief moment you knew the devil before.
These movies are about life and death, but
Yeah.
they don't tend to talk about the devil in these films.
These are honestly, these are the questions, the conversations they were having for those 8 hours.
Yes.
You know?
They said, remember before the devil knows you're dead?
Oh, he was in Total Recall in 2012.
Oh,
And
great.
The Purge. He's also in The Purge.
Oh,
And
relevant.
the same year as Before Midnight. That's really sad. And he's in Boyhood. Okay. All these. Yeah, he's not famous for anything. This is stupid. Yeah, so, yeah, Ethan Hawke.
How did he become famous as a rat-faced boy?
Yeah, I guess he didn't. And there you go.
I mean, everyone knows who he is,
Yeah.
but should they?
Yeah. This is a question for you, audience. Should we know Ethan Hawke?
Is he worth it?
Is he worth it?
Is
he
it-
just a rat-faced little boy?
Is it worth it to bet on Ethan Hawke?
What are we betting?
Our lives.
Then no, I'm not betting on Ethan Hawke. Okay, so the other thing is that, like, if you have a conversation with someone you've just met and it can last in a comfortable way for more than like an hour,
That's your soulmate.
yeah, you're just like, okay, now we have to see each other all the time because we can do this. But imagine you just meet somebody
And you can just talk and talk and, talk.
and talk and talk and talk.
About deep, important subjects.
Yeah.
They never talk about TV shows.
Yeah.
They don't really talk about media, books, culture.
They talk about like history and culture, but like high art culture.
Yes. He refers to her as a Botticelli angel.
Yeah. And she's like, here's all these graves of the missing people that
Yeah,
washed ashore.
Nick thought that part was funny.
Well, no, there's a part where Ethan Hawke is like, so they just kept washing ashore, and she's like, yeah. And I just thought like,
And he thought it was funny that dead bodies were washing up on the
just
shore
thought-
with no names.
I just thought it was like, why are these bodies continuously washing ashore? Don't you think the town would be like, what is happening here?
I don't think that's the point of the story.
Yeah, well, in my mind, that was the story.
That just bodies and bodies and bodies and bodies.
Yeah, let the bodies hit the floor.
Let the bodies hit the floor.
Okay. Anyway, yeah. So if you have a conversation like that, it's like, okay, we have to,
Keep this going.
yeah, in some way.
It is. I mean, it's a magical little story.
Yeah.
It's a magical, realistic story, and magical realism is my favorite genre.
Gold. Okay. Yeah. And then, so they missed the play.
They don't see the play. They go to a carnival.
Yeah.
They're on a Ferris wheel, and that is when they have their first kiss.
And there's a moment where she's like, or one of them says like, hold me right now because I feel like I'm dissolving into like molecules or whatever. And it's like a pretty beautiful moment of like,
I think, isn't that in the second movie?
it might be, but like
Yeah, remember, because he says that he hasn't been touched in so long. He feels like if someone were to touch him, he would dissolve into molecules.
God, there is a lot of good lines.
There's
in
a
these
lot of
movies.
great
They're
moments.
very good. And also, I will say though that there's sort of moments where all of those special magical characters feel like NPCs in a video game, where they come up and they're like, "We have a quest for you."
Maybe you should explain that, because not
Yeah.
everyone knows what NPC means.
Yeah, so like a quest giver in a video game is just like NPC that has dialogue that you
A
can interact
non-player character is
Yeah,
what
exactly.
it stands for. I'll translate.
with. And a lot of the characters in this movie, like the poet on the river,
The
and
fortune teller,
the fortune teller, some other ones,
the bartender,
bartender,
who
they're
gives
all
them
like,
the bottle of wine.
they all eventually like say yes and add something to their little night in a really selfless, nice way.
They move the plot forward. They come in kind of mystically, and then we never see that person again.
Yeah, and they feel, and in that way, it feels kind of ethereal and like as though they are these NPCs. So,
And I think as the films progress, as we see the second one and the third one, we see that less and less.
yeah,
But that's because their relationship becomes more grounded and more real.
yeah, which is kind of sad.
It's kind of sad. I mean, they're also getting older, but it's also
Yeah.
it also is kind of beautiful in a way, because you also see their familiarity with each other more and more.
Yeah, I mean, there's like I was telling you while we were watching that the thing that I like most about these movies is that it feels like whoever was the main writer of them or anything, like they really nailed what the heart yearns for during those ages. Like
So
what
they're in
you're
their
thinking
20s,
about.
and then they're in their 30s, and then they're in their 40s.
Yeah, and in the 20s, it's like they're thinking about their place in the world, and they're thinking about these huge sort of existential questions, and they're thinking about like true love, and like they're thinking about things in a really broad, artful way that you're like. And I remember being that age and just being like, I just want, like, I hope I never lose this. And that actually becomes a theme later on, because like in the second one, when they're in their 30s, it's a little bit more real, and it's about like the idea of like settling for less than that. And in the last one, it's all about like we are so people of the world that we have, like, what is the meaning in our lives right now? Have we lost ourselves to the demands of day-to-day
The everyday
life?
demands.
Yeah, and I think that it's
drudgery.
like, and I can't speak to the final one yet, but like the second one too, like I've been so in that mindset. And it just feels like the first two nail it so specifically that I was like, wow, this is like crazy that they were able to so specifically target that that like soul of being in those ages, and just like that is what is shown. And I think that's the biggest triumph of these movies, other than being romantic as fuck.
So romantic.
So romantic. Yeah, so I actually even wrote down at one point that this is the most romantic day even possible. Like, it's just like, if you,
Even though they're smelly and they have no money.
yeah, but that's more romantic. They have no money, so like when they go to the bar near the end to get some wine,
Bottle of wine.
and she's like stealing glasses so that they can drink it. Like, she's like pocketing the glasses, and he goes up and he's like, man, I don't have any money, to the bartender. He's like, but you see that woman over there? I will never see her again. And this is like the best day ever. And I really want to be able to drink under the stars with her. And he's like, okay, you've promised to wire me payment, then enjoy the best night of your life. And it's just like, it again, if any one of these things happened, you'd be like, that was an incredible romantic moment of my life that I'll remember forever. The fact that they all happened within the stretch
One
of
day.
8 hours, I mean, it'd be like, yeah, I guess I'm not going back to the United States. Like, we just have to be together forever, I guess.
So how does it end, Nick?
It ends with them kind of walking around, dancing after having sex in the park, after drinking the bottle of wine. Anyway, and they...
We don't see them making love.
No, because
But
that'd be
it's
crass.
very obvious that they do.
Yeah, in fact, there's a moment where she's like, no, let's not, we can't fuck, because I don't want to reduce it down to just a man trying to get in my pants.
Yes.
But then they have such crazy animalistic
Chemistry.
magnetism.
They do anyway.
They do, yeah. And so they're walking to the train station, and you can see just like the fear in their eyes.
And now it's morning, and now it's
Yeah.
more real, and the glimmer of the night before
Yeah,
has
the magic
worn
has
off.
faded a little bit, and they're just like, I know that we said that we were just gonna have this one day and never see each other again, and we had planned it that way, but I can't stand the thought of never seeing you again. In 6 months, let's come back here, meet at this train station right here, and we'll see each other again. And she's like, yes. And then they like kiss, and they have like a great moment, and then they don't exchange numbers or anything, because they don't want like the feeling that they're having in that moment to slowly fade away.
And
through
it's
the course of-
1994, so
Yeah.
we do not know how to find each other.
Yeah.
We don't have internet. We don't have anything.
Yeah.
If they don't exchange numbers, there's no way.
They have to rely on this one promise to come back.
This
in
one
6
day,
months
December 16th.
in Vienna. And then before
And
we
that's
move
the
on-
end of the
That is
movie.
the end of the movie, but it does do this really nice thing that you pointed out to me that I didn't really realize. They actually go over all of the spots that they went to in the daytime.
Yeah.
And
They show them in the daytime empty.
empty, but also just like all of these super magical moments happened in all these places, but then they look so
Normal.
normal,
Mundane.
Yeah, and it feels weird. It's like sort of bittersweet. It really drives home the feeling at the end of like this crazy romantic thing has happened, and then it's fading away. And again, very smart of the filmmaker to be like, and the transitory nature of this moment makes it even more romantic.
And I think it also hits home the fact that it doesn't matter where you are, it matters who you're with. Because you can be
Though
in
it
the
probably
most...
helps being in Vienna.
It does help being in Vienna, but imagine just doing all those things by yourself.
Yeah.
Imagine being on a boat, playing pinball in Vienna by yourself.
Yeah.
Or even if you were with somebody that you weren't particularly
Into.
or you didn't like very much.
Yeah.
Like the German couple. I bet the German couple didn't have a good time. If they got off in Vienna, I bet the Austrian gays didn't offer them to come to their play
Yeah.
because they had bad energy.
Yeah, they really did. But, and also another thing that I just want to talk about in the first two movies is that there are no cell phones. And it really...
Well, there's a little bit of it.
In the second, yeah.
Celine has a cell phone in the second one, but she doesn't. It's a rudimentary one.
Yeah, but one of the things that really, like, kind of hit me as somebody who grew up without a cell phone but doesn't really remember that time now, like, life was so different. Like, they went 8 hours without ever being distracted by anything, and they were just, their attention was totally on each other. And the moment they were in, and it what a crazy, beautiful thing. It made me be like,
I miss
I'm
it.
going to throw this phone in the garbage can. Yeah.
I would love it if you did.
We all have our addictions. Mine's my phone. But yeah, just really wonderful. So why don't we just
Transition to the next movie?
Yeah, transition into the next movie. First one's Before Sunrise. Second one's Before Sunset.
That's right.
So Before Sunset, we start and we find out
What year
that
is it,
Jesse,
Nick?
It's 2004. 3.
3, and then it came out in 2004.
And we find out that Jesse, who is now a writer,
We're in Paris.
has transformed into even more of a rat man. Less greasy, but he is definitely still
He's
a
a
rat man.
published rat man.
Yeah, he's a published rat man. He's wrote a book about that night called like
That time.
That Time, which is a terrible
Or is it
name.
This Time?
Well,
he writes 2 books.
This Time and That Time.
This Time and That Time. Don't ask us to tell you which one is first and which one is second. We do not know.
Yeah, and it's terrible titles, and they
Very generic.
He basically goes through a little bit of the plot of the book, and he's at a signing, and then one of the
At Shakespeare and Company, a very famous
Yeah.
bookstore in Paris that I have been to.
and one of the reporters there is like, did it actually happen, and what happened to her? And he's like, well, I can't say, I don't want to say, or whatever. And then
Being all coy.
yeah, Celine like comes around the corner and sort of waves at him, and you see him like kind of freak out a little bit. And he's like finishes the interviews, and he's like, "Oh my God, it's so good to see you. I haven't seen you for so long. What's going on?" And so you realize, oh, they haven't seen each
Other since the first movie.
and
Which means that
they didn't
they didn't meet up.
meet up, and that actually gets discussed really fast. And that is like essentially what happened was that her grandmother had passed away like the day before she was supposed to be in Vienna, and so she had to go to the funeral
On that day.
and she's like, but you didn't go, right? And he's like, no, I didn't go. And then she's like, wait, but then how did you know that
I
didn't
wasn't
go?"
there.
Oh no, you went.
He was there. He
Yeah,
did
and
go.
he's like, yeah, it was just a stupid little thing. And you are immediately like, oh no. And you see that he is married. He has a ring on.
You notice, well, Nick noticed
Yeah.
that he has a ring on for a long time in the movie before that fact is acknowledged and before they talk about the fact that he's married.
Yeah.
Or their relationship statuses.
Yeah, and they just have this like basically there's a time limit of he has to get on a plane to go back to the US. And so he's like, can you show me around Paris
Before sunset,
before I gotta get on my plane? Yeah.
which is at sunset.
Which is the name of the movie. And so they do that, and they start walking around, and
I wrote it. I like how the movie goes almost immediately back to the original format.
yeah, immediately it's like
You see, the beginning is very different
Yes.
from
Yes.
the original movie with the book signing, and there's all these people, but suddenly, boom, we're back to Jesse and Celine
Yeah.
talking and walking.
Well, it's actually interesting that like the first movie, second movie, and third movie, the first 5 to 10 to 20 minutes, I think, kind of in progression, and it starts with them around other people.
Yes.
And then, but I think that it's also sort of like, you could say that's sort of symbolic in how much their lives are affected by other people, and slowly
It
throughout
gets more and more.
Gets more and more, so
Yeah.
that the time that we have with just them becomes less and less as the series goes on. But
Which is indicative of their relationship with each other and
With
the
each
amount of
other
time
and
that
the
they
world,
actually
yeah.
get to spend with each other.
yeah, and so they start walking around, and one thing that you see that I love that the movie does is that they actually switched sort of like cynical optimist sort of perspectives, where Jesse's like, yeah, you know what? I think that the world on the whole is getting better. And Celine, who's like an environmental lawyer and activist, is like, are you fucking kidding me? like everything is burning
She lists
around us.
everything that's going wrong. And it's funny because it feels like that now.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to see, it also felt like that in 2004.
Yeah. Yeah, and it just is and actually in the third one of the side characters is like every generation feels like the world is ending around them. And so
And it's never ended yet, but we'll see.
yeah, we'll see. It kind of feels more real this time. But yeah, so and then they, like you said, immediately kind of jump back into where they left off.
They
but
talk
they're-
about sex almost
Yeah.
immediately.
Yeah, they're like way more comfortable with it. Like in the first one, they were always talking about these kind of lofty things, and this time they start with talking about jobs.
Yes.
They talk about
They catch up a little bit.
like what's happening in their life, sex, all that kind of stuff. But still, they sort of drift from that into like the greater like perspectives behind, or like the driving force of why people have these conversations. Like, what is it? What greater point of humanity are they trying to reach in? And like, I immediately was like, man, if I could just try to have like one of these types of conversations a week, I feel like I would be a lot more like interesting and interested in the world, because I'd be constantly looking for other stuff in it. And I don't know, it feels good that they still were thinking that way. It sort of reveals them for who they are, you know?
I think part of the reason I love these movies is because I love conversation, and I love deep, long, meaningful conversations.
Yeah.
Without cell phones.
Yeah. And I think that the true magic of the movie and the romance of these movies is the amount of attention that is just directed on each other. And maybe that's because we'll talk about it later, but like, I didn't think that the third movie was as romantic.
Well,
and I'm not at that age yet, and I do think that you have to watch each of these at the age that they are to really probably appreciate it. So I'm very excited to revisit Before Midnight when I'm around that age. But like, I don't know, it just,
well, life has really gotten in the way in a lot of ways. And I was saying this to Nick again during the movie, is I go to a summer camp every year, and it's a very idyllic situation, and we don't really have to deal with real life. We don't have to cook our own meals. We don't have to do laundry. We don't have to, deal with the everyday dreck of life. And so we kind of would always joke when we were younger that like maybe these friendships that we've formed, seeing each other 1 week a year for our whole lives, maybe they wouldn't survive real life. Like, what if we had to worry about traffic and
the logistics of meeting up?
Exactly. And maybe people not communicating as much, or worrying about who's going to make plans and the friendship, because at camp we're together all the time. We don't have to worry about
who
it.
has money to do what and everything.
Exactly.
Which is actually in this movie, like, he pays for a lot of the things now.
Yes.
Like,
he's able to.
He has money, and so he just like, it's just these like little changes that I feel like are really rewarding to watch back to back, where they really do. I wonder if the actors in Linklater like watched the previous one before they wrote the next one, and they're like,
I don't know,
because
probably
it just feels like
it picks up right where the last one.
And it really feels like they take the themes and they explore them, and they just kind of twist them around in different ways in each one in a really satisfying way. I really, really liked that. Yeah.
She points out his deep forehead wrinkle.
Though neither of them talk about their horrifying teeth. They have.
You mean his horrifying? You think they both have horrifying teeth?
They both have horrifying teeth. I
disagree. He has horrifying. Everything about Julie Delpy is perfect.
I won't deny that. But her teeth
are perfect.
They're perfect in sort of a monstrous way.
Nick, you can't say that about a woman.
No, but I also think that Ethan Hawke was worse.
Yeah, obviously.
Yeah.
He's worse in every way.
It's just, again, it's one of those things that like sort of like kicked me out of the sort of movie cinema mindset and into like
realistic.
Real life. Yeah, it's real life. It's like,
it's a real movie.
Those people's teeth, they kind of look like mine in that I have to go to the dentist every 3 months because I had a deep cleaning and they found something wrong, and they just have to keep getting there with little knives and little scrapers.
Little knives.
Yeah,
they're not putting knives in your mouth, Nick.
Well,
don't lie on our dentist.
You don't know what Lorna's doing to me.
That's a real name.
Anyway,
what if she's listening, Nick?
Lorna, please stop talking about how I need to eat more celery and less sweets. It's kind of weird. She's
gonna give someone an eating disorder.
Yeah, for real. Like, come on, Lorna. It's not a dentist's job. That's like,
That's no one's job. No one needs to tell anyone to eat celery.
Exactly. It's
celery's gross.
It's a horrifying aromatic,
It is.
Yeah. But yeah, so the movie continues on. They go on a beautiful boat ride that's like a tourist trap, but he kind of convinces her to go.
And he's kind of constantly, she's saying throughout the film, you have to catch your plane. You have to catch your plane. He's like, no, I got plenty of time. I'm going to be sitting at the airport for an hour. I got it. It's fine. He doesn't want to get on that plane.
And you realize that, and like they're both in a relationship now.
He has a son.
He has a son named
which
Hank.
is hard. And his son is 4.
Yeah. But the thing is that he is very open with like, I don't like my wife.
Yes.
He's like, she got pregnant. I felt responsible.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to be like the men that I admire and take responsibility for this action. And so I married her. And now I haven't been touched in like 10 years.
Yes, he says we've had sex like 10 times over 4 years.
Yeah, and this is when the molecule sort of like dispersing into molecules if is touched.
And when he describes his wife, he doesn't really say, he says she's a great mom and a great elementary school teacher.
Yeah.
And if my spouse or my partner, if those were the first nice things that they had to say about me.
Yeah, if you were like, hey, this is Nick, he's a really good office space coordinator. I would be like, fuck you, dude.
What do you like about him? I love the way he paints walls and puts together furniture.
Yeah, it's like, this is so awful. It's like and again, it's like sort of the opposite of the romance that they had together, where they were talking about these greater thoughts and ideas and the stuff that makes up a person's like soul, it feels like. And then the way that they kind of describe their current partners are that like, oh, they're very attractive, and they like Celine is like, he's a war photojournalist, but also has like a really kind of interesting thing she says, which does not super go towards the greater part of the movie, but I thought was really, really fascinating and had me think about photojournalist in a different way after that, where she was like, he saw like a homeless man and he wanted to take a picture, and he was like going up to this homeless person who obviously needed help, and instead was like adjusting his collar so that he could take a better photograph. And I thought that was like such an interesting...
I have no memory of that.
Yeah, it really stood out to me. I don't know.
I don't remember that part of the movie at all.
But I thought that it was also like similarly to how he described his wife. She basically just said like, yeah, he's really good at his job, but also he lacks like a fundamental humanity that I need in my life.
I mean, they're obviously wanting to be with each other.
Yeah.
And I think that even before either of them discusses their relationship status, they know.
Yeah.
I mean, we learn later, is it in the third one, that he writes that book so that he can find her.
Yeah, I think it's actually in this one he's basically like, I think I wrote this book because I thought that there might have been a chance that I could have found you. Like that maybe I would run into you in a Paris bookshop or whatever.
And she goes to the bookstore because she sees that he wrote that book.
Yeah, and she's like, reads the book, and then at first it's so
she has mixed feelings about the way she's portrayed in the book, which I get.
Yeah, but also like there's this really interesting thing where she like reads it, and at first she's like, yeah, no, I loved it, it was really great, congratulations, but by the end she's like it fucking just like made me depressed, man, because like now it brought up all these feelings of like who I used to be and like what I was looking for, and I've just totally caved on all of it. And it's like such a feeling of leaving your early adulthood and into the middle of your life, where you're just sort of like,
well, they're in their 30s, so that's not middle of their life.
Well, we don't know what happens to that. Maybe it's exactly middle, we never know. Yeah, I think that there's this moment of like the realism that creeps in by the world forces on you and our society forces on you. They still have that awareness to try to actively fight against it, but it's slowly washing over them in a way that they're not super aware of. And I think that is so, again, it's like the perfect snapshot of a feeling of an age. And it's so good.
These movies are incredible.
And
I just saw your note that said Alice is crying.
Oh yeah, Alice did start sobbing multiple times through these movies.
Mostly at the end of the last one.
Yeah, and so they start walking back to
they go to a cafe.
Yeah,
they go to, they walk around Paris. They go on a boat, and then eventually they hop in the driver.
Yeah.
So they're driven.
And he's like,
Jesse's driver.
We'll drive you home before they drive into the airport. And then she's just like, fucking let me out right now. I don't want to be in this car with you anymore, because he's like a constant reminder of what she wants out of life, I think, is my interpretation. But and then he kind of like soothes her, and then they go, and he's like, I'm gonna walk her to her door, and we meet Che the cat, star of the film.
Che Diaz the cat.
Yeah, who is this wonderful little kitty that loves being held and scratched. They walk up like 6 flights of stairs while just sort of like looking at each other and like almost touching each other, and it's like very hot.
It's very
Meow,
sexy.
says Che the cat.
Yeah, Che's watching and Che's into it.
Yeah, Che is always watching.
That's terrifying.
And then they kind of like go up and he's like, hey, before I leave, can you play me one of your songs? Because you said that you're like a guitarist. And she's like, yeah, you can. I have one.
She says, I only have 3 songs in English. I have one about my cat.
One about my ex-boyfriend.
And a waltz.
And
Which is really burying the lead,
Yeah.
Celine.
And he's like, okay, why don't you play me the waltz? And she's like,
She's like, I
okay."
haven't played it in a while. It's not going to be good. It's going to be good.
Yeah, because it's about fucking Jesse and their
And it's
wonderful night.
gorgeous.
Also,
And she's really good
you
at
know
playing
what's
the guitar and
frustrating to
singing?
me is that like when you look out into the world, it's so hard to even find somebody who like doesn't want to explain NFTs to you. But both of these people have made artistic works based on their first meeting with each other. It's like, fuck you guys. This is so wonderful.
Again,
Fuck you
Nick, this
guys.
is the movie acknowledging how rare and beautiful and amazing what happens in the first movie is.
Yeah.
And it's the world of the films taking that really, really seriously.
Yeah.
And I mean, of course, they're extraordinary people, right? They're both extremely smart. They both love poetry and music and art. And like, they're both, very knowledgeable about all of
And
those
they're
things.
both,
He
like-
recites poetry to her in the first one.
Yeah, and they're
like, how
both-
many young 20-year-old dudes do you know who can just recite poetry to you?
Yeah,
like,
and they're both like super accepting of each other. Like she accepts that he's a rat man that lives in a sewer, and
he accepts that she's much smarter and better than him.
that she is one of the angelic hosts that serve our Lord and Savior or whatever. Anyway, yeah,
Or whatever.
They keep
So she
a long
plays-
shot of them
Yep.
just sitting, and he
She
just
plays the whole song for him, and it's gorgeous.
fucking beautiful. And he's like, okay, just one more. And she's like, no, you said one. You should go get your fucking plane or whatever. And he's like, just after some tea, but she's brewing tea. And she's like, do you like chamomile? And then
He puts on Nina Simone.
she puts on Nina Simone.
He puts on Nina
Oh,
Simone.
he does. Oh, yeah. And then she's,
it's her CD, but he puts it on.
and then she's like kind of like dancing to it and kind of being like, have you ever seen her in concert? She's like, ooh. Ah. And she like kind of has this like funny little like weird dance thing. She
did see Nina Simone in concert before she died.
And then she just kind of looks at him and goes, you are going to miss your plane. And he kind of whispers, yeah, I am.
And that's the end of
And
the
that's
movie.
the end of the movie. It's so great. My favorite of the 3. Oh, so beautiful.
That's some infidelity that we can feel good about.
Yeah, too often in our culture, our cheating narratives looked on with disdain. Honestly, they're the most romantic. No, the thing that I think the movie does smartly about that part of it is that he's just really honest. Like, I just don't love her.
Yeah. I think he sets it up very well that like, and I think we learn more in the third movie that she's not
the good.
she's not a good person.
She's not the good person.
And it is really sad that like clearly these two characters are meant to be together,
Yeah.
but he has in the intervening time has married somebody and had a child.
Yeah.
Which was clearly not right. But I mean, he loves his son.
Yeah.
And so that part of it is pretty beautiful.
Yeah, and I mean, okay, so now we're in
Before Midnight,
Before Midnight, the final
2013.
film. Yeah, and God, there's so much to talk about. I will say this one's my least favorite of the 3, and I think it's because I don't understand it yet.
It's the least romantic.
It's the least romantic. It's the most grounded in reality. It's like such a good film. It is still very good, but it just feels...
Sad.
Yeah, it just feels sort of melancholy a little bit. And also, the thing about these films is that you're like, I just want to watch these two together forever. And then the final film, so like, it starts with...
So they're in Greece.
They're in Greece, and he's dropping his son off at the airport after a summer. And you find out that essentially the mom has custody of Hank, who is now a teenager.
Yeah, 13.
Yeah, and
13 or
so
14.
in the summer, he is sent to live with his dad. And there is sort of a weird thing where you can feel the like kind of desperate attempt by Jesse to try to connect with his son as much as possible and be like
Be present.
be like a teacher in his life. and also like this deep well of guilt that he's not there with him and
Every
that his
day.
mom has him, essentially.
I mean, they're sort of stuck in an impossible situation
Yeah.
with Henry, with Hank, the son. It's actually a big point of contention between Jesse and Celine, who are now married.
No, they're not married.
Oh, you're right. They're not married, but they're together.
They're together. They have been. They have 2 twin girls together.
They have twin girls, Nina and Ella,
Which
who
is
I think
great.
is named after Nina Simone and probably Ella Fitzgerald. That would be my guess. And they're very cute and they're bilingual.
Yes. I wish I was bilingual.
You can do it,
I
Nick.
can't do it. I've tried. I spent literally like 7 years of my scholastic career trying to learn Spanish. And I got to the point where I could sort of like slowly piece things together.
You want to give me a little bit right now?
No. I think that would just be a quick road to just
Being canceled?
I mean, in the worst case, probably, yeah. But like, I just
What's the
couldn't
best
do it.
case scenario?
Best case, it would just flow out of me.
Suddenly you would just
as
be
though I was sitting in the
Antonio
Tower of Babel, yeah.
Banderas.
And it would come and I'd be like, oh my god, if I just have a little bit of encouragement, I can do it.
If I just put my phone down for 45 minutes, I could speak fluent Spanish.
Duolingo has taught me so well.
Dua Lipa has taught me so much.
Dua Lipa? What has she taught you?
She's taught me that you can be a pop star if you really try at it.
You know what she's taught me is that pop stars are manufactured. I hate all of the industry.
Do not say Dua Lipa. Do not say you hate her,
I don't hate her. I just hate that the fact
because that would
she
be
doesn't
would be a
write-
hate crime if you said that.
She doesn't write any of her music. She doesn't like choreograph any of the dances. And I know that this is like everything, but we saw a behind the scenes sort of song exploder thing on Netflix, and it was like she basically just comes in, learns the song, and then becomes very famous because she's very
That's what being a
beautiful.
pop star is, Nick.
I know, but it's just frustrating.
But guess what? She still has a lot of talent,
Yeah.
and she's still worth it.
So before sunset,
Midnight.
before midnight,
So Jesse and Celine are together and have been for at least
100 years.
7 or 8 years at this point, because
Yes.
their children are 7.
Yep.
And she's kind of at a transitioning point in her career. They live in Paris.
Yep. Though they're
They're
in
Greece.
They're in Greece for the summer on like a writer's retreat for Jesse, who has now released 2 more books since the last last movie, and
Celine is at a bit of a transitioning point in her career. She's been offered potentially a dream job, but Jesse is sort of more hesitant about that job.
Yeah.
Because I think her boss would be a guy who's kind of a dick.
we hate dick bosses, boss dicks.
Sorry, I'm imagining a penis with a little like
Little like cummerbund.
top hat. What? Bosses don't wear top hats and cummerbunds.
All my bosses wear full tuxes. Okay.
Putting on the Ritz.
Yeah, they have little canes with
Yeah,
like
and they had little tap shoes.
with a big emerald like stone at the top that they kind of hold in the cane.
yeah.
And it's like also a cane sword. Can we make this movie?
Yes.
Yeah, and so they and they're in this car, and you kind of see them being very supportive of each other, but they are also not talking about anything except work and
Yes.
the girls.
They're not having a
and
deep conversation.
Hank.
The twin girls are asleep in the back seat.
Yeah.
And they're driving back to the villa where they're staying.
Yeah.
It's very beautiful.
It is very idyllic, and then that you see sort of them at the writers' retreat, and I think it's very interesting is that the director has split them up, so you see like Celine talking with all the women and kind of like doing that like other things,
And then you see Jesse talking with the men.
Yeah, and then you also see
He's talking about a book he wants to write.
Yeah, which
Doesn't sound
it
good.
does not sound good.
Sounds bad.
Every time Ethan Hawke talks about the book that he's going to write, I'm like, that is a horrible idea for a book. That doesn't even have a story in it. It's just like...
Yeah, it's just like a bunch of random characters. He's like, I want to tell the story of all of these characters, and they all have something weird with their brains, and they're all experiencing the same day, but in different ways. And I'm like, okay, you want me to read about the same day 6 different times?
Which I guess is like the 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle.
Yeah, but that's way cooler.
Anyway, so...
That's way better, though.
Yeah, it is a very good book. Everyone.
His book didn't have a lick of a mystery.
Yeah, they were going to go see a Marlon Brando movie. Okay, Richard Linklater, like, come on. Jesus.
On the waterfront.
Yeah, let's go see On the Waterfront. It's 2013.
You know what's a better movie than that? Before Sunrise.
Yeah, let's go see that movie. And they have this big dinner where they kind of have this like little fight, like public fights, but they're also doing it in a way that's sort of entertaining. This is a thing that I
And we see a lot of generations at that dinner table,
Yeah.
which I think is very of these films, to show characters at different ages. So we have the guy who's a author who runs the writer's retreat, who's probably in his 70s,
Yeah.
and then we have Celine and Jesse in their 40s, and we have two young lovers in their 20s.
Yeah, and they have a conversation about like what love and sex is going to be going into the new generation, and they're like the young couple is talking about how like they Skype to sleep every night.
And the Greek guy asks if they're having Skype sex, which is
horrifying.
really crossing a line.
Yeah, but also like it was interesting when the two young couple, they're like, "Do you guys think you're gonna break up?" And both of them were like, "Yeah, eventually." And it was like interesting. It is definitely a change from, and I think it's interesting that it was added in here because the first movie sort of posits that there is like a greater love that kind of goes through everything, and the second movie kind of reinforces that,
And that these two
they
characters
come
are meant to
together.
be.
And then the third one, you sort of
They're really struggling.
yeah, they're struggling because as we see them then like start walking to this hotel that was paid for them that Celine doesn't really want to go to, and they're just
They have to leave the girls behind. They're leaving the next day. Celine is she's the caretaker of the family, and
Yeah.
it seems like she is doing way more than Jesse in that department. It does not seem there's a lot of invisible labor that she is doing that he is not helping out in. You know, when they're packing for a trip, Celine packs for everybody and Jesse just packs for himself.
I guess that's also kind of shown in the beginning that in the social interactions that the men versus the women are doing, the women are actually making the
cooking.
food that they're going to eat later, and the men are just kind of like hanging out on this like
By the
beautiful,
water.
idyllic little area patio place. Yeah, and then they're like walking there and they're having, and it immediately you're like, okay, finally we're back.
We're back to our format.
Yeah, because they're just sort of like talking, and they're like, man, how long has it been since we've been able to talk like this?
And to think.
Yeah, and to think, and they sort of have this like sort of thing where they're trying to bring romance into it, but they both kind of keep like
Veering.
faltering back into reality. Like she's like, "Do you think that if you saw me on that train now, you would like come up to me and ask me to get off the train with you?" And he was like, and then she's like, "You wouldn't, would you?" And she was like, "I was just looking for some romance," and so that there was like this.
She asks a lot of loaded questions.
Yeah, and also it does feel like what the movie is trying to give you is sort of like this idea between truth and quote unquote right or romantic answer. It's sort of like the real answer doesn't always match up with how we want the world to be, and it makes it sort of feel like, man, you can feel the toll that just life has taken upon the love and romance
And
of the relationship.
I mean, and all those things are hard. Having kids is hard.
And she didn't. I kind of
Living in, being from separate countries is hard.
Yeah, like,
divorce.
You find out that like Hank basically was smuggled out of New York when Jesse and Celine went back to France for her to give birth to
And
the
it was
twins.
a hard pregnancy.
Yeah, it was a hard pregnancy, and then Jesse had to like go back and try to get custody of Hank because like the mom had like taken him across like
State lines.
and now there were different laws that were more like favorable for her to keep the child, and
they have a really bad relationship with Jesse's ex-wife.
Yeah.
So neither of them get along with her, and she says all this, Celine says she's an alcoholic and she's awful. But courts will favor the mother often in these situations just because of societal expectations that mothers will be better parents, which is not true sometimes.
But also the other thing that I thought was really interesting about this thematically is that every time that they're just with another person and talking to them, they have a really good relationship. Like both Celine and Jesse both have really good talks with Hank, and they seem like really loving to him, and like them and their daughters have like a good relationship, and them and their friends seem to have a good relationship.
They even say the leader of the writers retreat says this is the first time we've had an author here whose partner was more interesting than him, which I really loved.
And yeah, I thought that it's interesting because then the only thing that's getting in the way is all of the logistics of life.
Yes.
Like Jesse kind of wants to go back to Chicago so that he can be with Hank during his teenage years. And she's like, I absolutely do not want to go to Chicago because I finally have this dream job that I want to take. And like, she feels as though,
and she's European. Like
Yeah.
she is a person that seems to need to live in
Europe.
Paris. Yeah.
And she, like, after becoming a mother, feels as though her identity has been taken from her. And like the logistics of just like being alive with a family and all that kind of stuff has taken away something from them, which again, I'm really interested to see when I'm like 40 or whatever and watch this film again, if that's going to be really resonant, because that's really scary and sad. But yeah, the feeling of the idea that you are losing something when you're in your 30s and then now in your 40s, that you have lost something, you've lost a sense of who you were in service to this other person that you are now.
But I also think that the film does focus more on their problems than on everything that they've gained.
Yeah.
Which is that like I think that they have a wonderful family. They are with their soul. I think they're soulmates.
Yeah.
And I don't know, not everyone believes in that, but I do think that they're really meant to be together. And so the fact that they are together and that they made it work and that they have these, they have children and they both seem to have a really good relationship with Jesse's son is like really beautiful. Like Jesse's son keeps calling Celine from the airport, and he has confessed to her that he is like started up a little romance with
a woman, yeah.
Not a woman.
A full woman, and the spin-off of this is Licorice Pizza.
It's not Licorice Pizza.
That's so Licorice Pizza.
It's very Licorice Pizza, yeah. Hank, the 14-year-old, and an adult woman at the Grecian resort.
Yeah, but then I thought it was really interesting, too. Like, they're about to have sex, and they're, like, having this really...
In the hotel room.
Yeah, and in every other movie, when they are getting physically intimate...
You don't see any of it.
But in this one, they actually do show a little bit of it, because it feels
You
sort
do
of
see
like
her breasts.
a little titty.
I thought you were saying her little titties.
No, like a little bit of boob.
A little bit of boob, yep.
And but I think that they do it because it feels so part of the deal. It doesn't feel special or crazy.
Because they've done this many times now.
Yeah, and it feels just like rote or routine. And then
that's a good point.
And then they're about to like make love, and then the phone rings, and then like life stops
gets in the way,
and then they begin to have this fight.
Yes.
That continues on, and like you learn about how like Celine feels like she was kind of abandoned during the early days of her, like the end of her pregnancy and like raising these babies, because like Jessie had to be back in the US to try to get custody of Hank. She is trying to express herself in a certain way, and Jessie is just like trying to be like rational and cold and like hit like, which I have like thought that way before too, and it's like totally
it's so
toxic.
It's just toxic masculinity to say like, well, I'm going to be the rational, I'm going to be the devil's advocate in this situation, and because you're getting emotional, that negates everything that you have to say.
Yeah.
Which is like, we're human beings, we're going to be emotional, and we're going to be emotional about our really important things in our lives, and the fact that you have this child in another country that I would love to have live with us, but we can't work it out.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I felt myself swapping between them quite a bit, because there are points
like
when
whose side that you were
yeah,
on?
because there are points where Jessie is
good
just
argument
like,
then.
Yeah, because like Jessie is like at certain points like, if you don't want to go, we're not going. I'm like super devoted to you and the girls, and like I love this life we have together, and I love you, and I am devoted to you. But then she keeps like bringing up these things that like try to like tear down that like connection with each other. And then there's also a moment where it's sort of one of them or both of them maybe have cheated on the other. Which is never really resolved.
She brings up a moment that on one of his book tours where she had suspicions that he had cheated on her, and he never
denies it.
Never denies it. She says to me, swear on the girls that you did not cheat on me, and all he says is like, I am devoted to you, I am here with you, which to me is a concession of guilt. But I also think that there's
but he says like, hey, you were at a conference and there was like this person,
an old boyfriend
like after his mom died, you went to him. And he's like, and I never asked about it, and I don't want to talk about it.
Yeah, and he's like, I understand that you're a complicated human being, and I accept you
Yeah.
for all of your flaws. And honestly, like they seem like a pretty evolved couple.
Yeah, like-
so I wouldn't be surprised if they were like a little non-monog.
Yeah, and they have like a really interesting sort of like relationship where obviously they are super devoted to each other in some ways, but also that
They're
are
very
both,
independent.
Yeah, they're both striving for independence, which also feels like
Which is the theme of the film.
yeah, definitely. It's like sort of this like fight between them trying to live for something more than themselves, but then feeling like I've given away myself in service of that, and I don't like it.
I've lost some part of myself.
Yeah, and so they have this fight, and eventually Celine just like
Storms
leaves,
out.
and Jesse is like sitting in the room, and we just see different like parts of the room all empty and alone, and him like looking, and then he goes, and we kind of see the old Jessie a little bit. Like she's sitting in a cafe alone
Outside.
just kind of, and she left saying, I think it's pretty simple. I think I just don't
Love you anymore. Oh, that's hard.
Yeah, which is really, oh God, it's like my heart fell into my stomach a little bit.
Because before that, even though they're fighting, they still are always saying kind of like, I care about you, I care about you, I care about you. And it never gets too mean.
Yeah, and then she keeps leaving and then coming back to like continue to try to talk it through. Then this time she leaves and she doesn't come back. And so Jesse goes and follows her.
And she really wants to be alone, clearly.
Yeah. And he kind of comes up and is like, hey, this is so weird, but I'm actually a time traveler. And I went to you when you are 86, and you gave me this letter to read to you.
It's on a napkin.
Yeah, and he just
It's also clearly blank.
yeah, it's clearly blank. He's like, essentially when he sits down, he like takes the napkin and puts it into his pocket too. But it's like this thing where you can see that there's still that little bit of them that is like super romantic and not bogged
playful.
down by the world that they live in. And
that's when Alice started crying.
Alice started sobbing, yes. And at first Celine's like, fuck you, I don't want to talk to you, I don't love you anymore,
I don't want to play these games.
Yeah, and she is like rejecting this like of Jesse
olive branch that he's clearly.
Yeah, and then he kind of turns to her and is like, I am here to try to make you laugh, and I'm trying to show you that I love you. And if you don't want that, fine. You are essentially not unlovable, but you are somebody who is taking somebody who may be flawed but still loves you, and you are throwing them out. And if that's the case, then fine, but you just have to understand what you're doing. And then she sort of like concedes and is like, okay, what else does the letter say? And they have this like nice little moment where they start kind of talking again, and we kind of fade out on it, and it's the end of the movie, which makes it very, we don't know what's going to happen with them. They're having
I think
these
they stay
troubles.
together.
Alice was sobbing. She's like, they stay together.
Of course they do. They're meant to be together.
Yeah, and I just...
There's too much history.
And like thinking back on it now, it's very beautiful and still very like, instead of romantic, it feels very loving in a weird way. And there's just like that little bit of romance that they tease you with at the end to show that it's still there a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, still my least favorite of the three, because it does...
Brings you back down to earth.
Yeah, it really, a lot of reality creeps in and it feels sad.
Yeah. Yeah, I cried the most at that one.
Yeah, because it does feel like there is a tangible loss that they're dealing with, but that they are still who they are. And I think that that's also kind of sad to show that they are still who they were, and also that they have lost something, but they still have something else. And I think that it is beautiful, but it's sad.
I would be very interested to see what they would do with a fourth movie.
Yeah, I would actually really love to see if they could really capture...
And they could have the little girls grown up.
Yeah.
They could they could be played by the same kids.
Yeah.
Because it's just time
unless
passing.
They're not actors.
We'll get them.
Yeah.
I'll convince them.
Okay.
I'll write to them.
And you could see Hank grown up.
Yeah, and they would have to use the same actor.
Yeah, I would love to see them as old people dealing with like coming into the end of their lives.
Well, they do talk about, would they be together in 56 more years?
Yeah, and it's like and it's just like, because that is something that I think about a lot, which this is kind of a downer, but like thinking about after your career is not ahead of you anymore, your family life is still there, but it's like in a very different way. You're not like a driving force in it anymore. You're sort of like a passenger in that time as you're older and have less, I mean, in my family, it feels that way where my grandparents and everything were more reliant on my parents, and like my parents had a more active role in like shaping me and shaping kind of family policy, I guess. But I would really love to see how that affects their love for each other and their relationship, because then you truly have, it's like sort of that life gets in the way during this middle part of your life, and then
all that stuff kind of goes away.
It kind of recedes, and then you're left with. It's kind of like, for me, the thing that I kind of get scared about and like sad and existential about is like, when all that stuff goes away, what are you left with? If you've given all of this time and energy into solving for those problems, and then all of it goes away, are you just left with like emptiness? And I think that is a
God, that's so dark.
And I would really love to see this movie talk to that, because I think, again, the true triumph of these movies are that they are so good at identifying a feeling of a time period, an age that they express so eloquently without ever like talking about it specifically, but they just embody that age so well.
Do you think the next one will be called Before Noon?
No, probably Before Dawn.
That makes more sense.
But I guess sunrise and dawn are kind of the same thing, aren't they?
They are, yeah. Before afternoon tea.
Before second breakfast.
Before my cat nap.
Before the night's time lands fullness.
Boo. I just did the math. If they were doing a fourth one, it would have to come out this year.
Yeah, I don't
not
think
that they're not. They're not.
Yeah,
but
I think that he said like.
But it's
20
interesting.
Years or something.
It's interesting that no, it would be 18, Nick.
No, but I'm saying that he said in the 20s, like 27 years, he wants to maybe do.
Oh my God, he's gonna be dead.
We'll see.
Richard Linklater, you have to hold on.
Yeah, please, just one more movie, please.
Please take good care of yourself, Richard.
What do you think about when artists are told to like stay alive so that they can finish the art that they make?
You mean like George R. R. Martin?
Yeah.
Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, he's kind of a betrayer.
Okay, well, anyway, this was the Before trilogy. Do you have like which one was your favorite out of all of them?
I think the first one's my favorite.
Yeah. I think the second one's so good because it's like...
The second one is really good.
It feels like, wow, second chances do happen, and it's sort of like it's never too late.
Yeah, maybe that one might be the most romantic.
Yeah. Because they fall in love again, which is harder.
Oh!
It's not just this one special night. It's like...
And there's a bookstore.
Yeah, you fucking nerd.
I'm the nerd. I'm the nerd here.
Oh, what were you doing over there? Reading?
I'm the nerd of this podcast. All right.
Listen, I'm going to go play D&D while you go read your books.
NPCs.
Any final thoughts about the Before trilogy? Would you recommend these? Like, how
I would recommend these to everyone. If you love action movies, then you have bad taste and you should watch more movies like this.
Whoa. Are these good? Yes. Are they good as good as Malignant? I'm not sure.
I don't even have a comment on that.
Yeah, I would also agree. Hard recommend to everyone. Watch it.
This is my favorite trilogy of all time. I think that they are.
What about watching them alone though? You watched them alone the first time, right?
You mean like by myself?
Yeah.
Yes.
How'd that feel?
Sad.
Do you think that it's better
love
watching it with somebody or?
I mean, it's nice watching them with someone that you love.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I would also recommend that. Like, I would do a hard recommend in either case, but I would recommend watching them with somebody that you love.
Even just a friend.
Yeah, even just a friend, because I think that
because it might turn into something more.
But also, I think that it's just nice to revel in the connection that the movie is showing, and then having that connection to like come out of it and feel in your life as well, I think is more meaningful than to have the movie end and then be like, will this ever happen to me? I think like you said, even if it's just a friend or if it's like
a pet
or whatever, just like having someone to be like there with you and having that connection to hold on to, I think helps the movie, the feeling of the movie last. I don't know if you think about that.
Yeah, it was nice. I've never watched them with anyone else. So,
well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast, Alice.
You're welcome, Nick.
And in fact, next month,
for a little tease,
Women's History Month,
Herstory Month,
Herstory,
Nick,
you're going to take over for an episode with your friend Liz, who's also been on the podcast
Yep,
before.
Billie Eilish.
Billie Eilish, who you might remember from the Malignant bonus episode.
Who loved old.
Yes, and you guys are going to do 2 rom-coms, right?
Something woman-centric.
Okay.
We're not sure yet.
It's going to be loose. I'll probably post something either on our Twitter or Instagram or something about what it is before
It'll be
comes
loose.
out.
We'll be loose.
I don't know what that means.
We'll be loose women. I don't know how you do that on a podcast, but you just wait and see.
I can't wait.
Maybe we'll drink a little wine.
Excellent. Anyway, so thank you so much for coming on, Alice. I can't wait to see what you guys do next. I will be editing that episode, so it will be a pleasure. I will be listening to it just like everyone else for the first time.
Aw.
And then
Thanks.
after that, I'll be back for the next month. I think we're doing in April 2 satires because it's April Fool's.
That was my idea.
Yeah.
You're welcome, everyone.
Yeah, I think that we're gonna. I think I'm gonna do Death of Stalin. Maybe I've heard that it's good. I've never seen it. It seems interesting, and I'll have another new guest on that one. I think. And then we'll go into the summer. Maybe Mary Ellen will come back for one, or maybe we'll keep going with guests. Who knows? But thank you so much for listening, everyone, and we will see you next time.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.